The Taliban have taken over Afghanistan. The question is, how will the country be governed from now onwards? According to reports, a ruling council might be taking charge. The third supreme commander of the Taliban, Haibatullah Akhundzada, is likely to be in charge of the major decision-making processes. In an interview with Reuters, a senior Taliban leader said that the Taliban will be reaching out to former pilots and soldiers from the Afghan armed forces to join its ranks. However, it is not known how the recruitment process will be panning out. Remember, thousands of soldiers have been killed by the Taliban over the last 20 years. US-trained Afghan pilots have been recent targets of the Taliban. The future power structure would bear similarities to how Afghanistan was run the last time they held power from 1996 to 2001. Then Supreme Leader Mullah Omar remained in the shadows and left the day-to-day running of the country to the council.
In future, this is not up to now discussed how it would be. Maybe we have a council, the head of the council, as you call the president, we would call that Rais al-Wazara, or the head of the council, and we will have ministers. All the ministers would be appointed by this council and by the head of the council. Amir al-Mu'mineen is our leader, religious leader, and also politics is part of the religion.
The Taliban Supreme Leader has 3 deputies: Maulavi Yaqub, the son of Mullah Omar; Sirajuddin Haqqani, the leader of the powerful military Haqqani network; and Abdul Ghani Baradar, the man who heads the Taliban's political office in Doha. He is also one of the founding members of the group. Many questions regarding how the Taliban would run the country are yet to be answered. One thing known for sure is that Afghanistan would not be a democracy. The top leadership will be discussing governance and further course of action later this week. There is skepticism around women's rights under the Taliban rule. So far, leaders say that the women's right to work, education, how they dress would ultimately be decided by a council of Islamic scholars.
We are Muslims. People in Afghanistan, 99.999% are Muslims. And they believe in Islam. When you believe in a law, so definitely you should apply that law. So Islam is a law, and Allah says in Quran that udkhulu fi silmi kafa. So we have to apply how to drink water, how to walk, and how to perform prayers, how to run a government. Our ulama will decide whether girls are allowed to go to school or not. One. Second, they will decide whether they should wear hijab, burqa, or only veil plus abaya or something or not. That is up to them.
During the Taliban's first press conference after taking over the country, their spokesperson said that women would be allowed to work and study within the framework of Islam. Last time, when the Taliban ruled the country, they had stopped women from working. Girls were not allowed to go to school. Women were required to wear burqas when stepping out. They were also required to be accompanied by a male relative. Those who broke the rules were subjected to humiliation and public beatings by the religious police. Western leaders have said that they will be judging the Taliban on the basis of their actions and not their words. And joining us for more on these developments is author and journalist and Afghanistan expert Lynn O'Donnell. Thanks very much, Lynn, for being here with us. Your reaction to the statements that have emerged now from within the Taliban leadership on how the country would be run. They say that women will be given their rights, but as per their interpretation of the Sharia, and no one knows for sure what that means.
Yes, exactly as you say. Nobody knows what anything that the Taliban leadership say means. I think it's very important to remember that we're talking about the biggest drugs producing and trafficking cartel in the world. They have already run over the country in the last 3 or 4 months, and in the districts that they have been into, they have shown very clearly how they are going to treat women. They've forced girls out of school and shut the girls' schools. They forced women out of their jobs and forced them back into their homes. They are only allowed out of their homes in the company of male relatives wearing full hijab. This is not a new Taliban light. This is the same old, possibly worse Taliban. They are liars, they are killers, they are misogynists, they are drug dealers. They cannot be believed. That press conference that they had earlier this week in the government's Media and Information Centre was an aberration. The man who used to run that, Dewa Khan Manipal, was murdered 2 weeks ago as he left Friday prayers by the Taliban. They took responsibility for it. Nothing they say can be believed.
Right. When we speak of what the country under the Taliban rule would be looking like, there have been these promises and these claims like we've been discussing. But at the same time, how optimistic are you about any sort of international intervention, be it even from the United Nations?
Well, I think that that's a really good question, because what we're seeing at the moment is a complete meltdown of authority, of America, Britain. There's a lot of bleating, but there's no action. We even heard from the head of the British Army yesterday, General Sadiq Carter, saying, well, maybe the Taliban have changed. Maybe they're more reasonable now. I don't know what planet he's been living on, but that's certainly not the case. We haven't heard anything from the United Nations. We haven't heard anything from the European Union. I think what we should be waiting for is pressure coming from the countries that, like India, Europe, Australia, America, the United Kingdom, that are democratic and have had engagements in Afghanistan over the past 20 years that have been aimed specifically at ensuring that the rights of all people are honoured and guaranteed and enshrined in the Constitution, and to let the Taliban and the people who are getting into bed with them now know that without guarantees that these rights will be honoured and proof in the pudding that they will be honoured, that they won't get the diplomatic recognition that they crave, and they won't be getting the aid dollars that they will need to run their country. We have to see some spine. We haven't seen it for some time, but it's time for some backbone to be shown when it comes to Afghanistan. There are 38 million people in that country who are terrified, who are trapped, who can't get out, who are looking at civil unrest, food shortages. The banking system has ground to a halt. It's time that the Western and Indian governments really showed what they're made of and put their values into action.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.